Welcome back, everybody, to the Denver Dzogchen podcast. I'm here once again with Joseph Wagner, and we have a very fun and exciting topic to talk with you today about, and that is the topic of supplements and herbs and the different roles they might play in a practitioner's life. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, so glad to be here. Good to see you guys.
So as I've told this story before on the podcast, but the whole reason I found Joe is because he owns a couple different supplement companies, mainly one that does Tibetan medicine and then one that has like cool tantric substances. And City Energetics, his Tibetan medicine company, really has a few standard formulas in the Tibetan medicine pantheon that I've relied on several times in my path. Particularly when dealing with the very common and well-known lung disorder that most people have heard of, in Ayurveda would be called a Vata disorder. But it's common in practice, especially for people who are vegetarian, who do a ton of mantra practice, a lot of breath work. These things can come up because you're stirring up a lot of wind element. So Joe, maybe you can give us an introduction to some of these basic formulas, and then we can kind of extrapolate from there.
Well, thanks for having me. And I guess I want to just start by saying this is not just like a sales job for City Energetics. City Energetics, thanks to our many supporters, is doing fine. So if you are interested in these things and you want to explore them, awesome. If you don't feel like it's necessary at all, I want to say that because otherwise it sounds like, yeah, we're going to mix our podcast with making money for Joe. This is a terrible idea.
Brought to you by City Energetics. Cha-ching!
Yeah, exactly. It is not about that. It's just because I've been very lucky, and I'll tell a little bit of the story about how I got into it, to come into contact with a lot of formulas and substances and compounds that are not available seemingly anywhere in our sad little world, and they really do have some profound effects. So it's mostly about sharing that information with the people who like this podcast. So I want to just
Yeah.
make sure that's where we're coming from. Um, my journey with these things, especially with Tibetan medicine, started in, I want to say it was 1995. I was in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and discussing some things with one of my teachers, who's a Nepali master who's spent a huge amount of time in retreat. And he said, "Well, your main problem is you have a lung problem." And I heard lung, and I was like, "I think I'm in okay shape lung wise." He's like, "Not that kind of lung, lung," which is the Tibetan word for chi or energy or prana, this kind of energy that flows in our bodies and moves our minds and operates our physical and mental and emotional lives. And so I was a little intrigued by that, having, taken various Chinese formulas before that, being somewhat familiar with Chinese medicine and so forth, which deals with the same pathways and same subtle energies. Long story short, you can hear about this if you look at the City Energetics website. I tell the story in some detail. I went to see the doctor, who also happened to be one of the Tibetan doctors who took care of my teacher Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And he took one look at me. In Tibetan medicine, they look at your tongue, they smell and look at how your pee is when you stir it up, and then they take your pulses, similar to Chinese medicine. He did those things and said, "Well, you got the same problem as every Westerner who comes in here." And I was like, "What is that?" He said, "You guys are crazy," which made me laugh and also it connected us. And we're still friends today, this doctor and I. Anyway, he gave me some medicine, two formulas, which Damien is probably referencing. One is called Semki Deki. You take that in the morning. It means mental well-being, is the translation. And another one called Agar 35, which contains a whole bunch of ingredients, and especially a kind of agar wood, and you take that one at night. And I started to take them, and within like 2 days, I felt very different than I had felt. I just felt like, wow, kind of like a level of anxiety that was present in my mind seemed to be much lighter and much more see-through. And so I got really interested in these formulas, and I ended up taking those too for quite some time. And it changed a lot of the way I look at myself and what my personality really is. I think some of my personality at that time was driven entirely by energetic imbalances that I wouldn't say they got completely worked out, because I'm still thinking and doing in the same way, and I still have the same worldview, same history. of course, same diet, this kind of stuff. And you really have to change everything to get a complete change. But it did have an effect on me that was very profound. It helped me to let go of, to some degree, a kind of stress and anxiety, which I thought was part of my personality. And it wasn't. It was just an imbalance, a misalignment of some energies in my body. And that made me very interested. And then later, looking for something to do professionally, I got involved in the distribution of these formulas. And they have been, I mean, not to toot our own horn, because I'm not making the medicines, but they've been really beneficial for thousands of people. I've been doing that about almost 20 years and more than 20 years now, and really have enjoyed it. It's been very beneficial for myself and for lots of other people. So I appreciate Damien saying, hey, we should do a podcast about these things, because
Mhm.
they're rare, they're interesting, and they're very powerful. So that's
Yeah.
just an overview of my own experience.
Well, I really appreciate what you're saying about how oftentimes what we think are like the problems we have seem intractable, personality traits, but rather biochemical, energetic, and that we can really, I remember in my 20s, I tried ashwagandha for the first time, and I was reading Dr. David Frawley,
Mm.
and I was like, I felt a calm and a energy that I hadn't ever felt before. And I started to learn a little bit about what different foods, the different kind of effects they have, having this
Mm.
kapha, pitta, or vata, and just following that a little bit, and it has completely changed how I live my life and my ability to navigate when I feel off. For some reason, things are just, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling depressed or whatever. There's often instead of trying to use thoughts and the mind to overcome the thoughts and the mind, right? Like we
Well
just
said.
spin. You're like, I should feel better. I want to feel better, but you're actually making it worse, just spinning and spinning in this mental space. But when you come at it from a physical level with, exercise, diet, and herbs, then you can work at a level below thought that will produce often, these results really quickly. And the good thing about these formulas is that they have many, many different herbs in them in small quantities. So it's pretty hard to poison yourself. They're designed to be,
They're very safe.
yeah, very safe. Like the adaptogenic herbs, they don't, they tend to, they adapt to you whichever way you need them to go. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the safety of these formulas and how they're designed to not be, of course, getting medical advice and seeing a Tibetan doctor would be the best in any situation. But some of these formulas are really designed to be very, very, very safe.
Yeah. I think that, you know, the disclaimer that everyone should be aware of is that everybody's a little different. And so many people in our modern world are on pharmacological drugs, whether for physical conditions or mental conditions, and if that's the case for the average person, then that person should definitely talk to their MD, their doctor, whoever's prescribing that stuff. You don't want to just start mixing in herbs, no matter where they're coming from or what you read or anything, without knowing like how they're going to interact with what you're already taking. That said, the Tibetan formulas are different than some very similar formulas like Chinese medicine, in that the ideal situation, if you are seeing a Chinese doctor, is to see them like every week. You get acupuncture, they test your pulse, they give you herbs. You take those herbs for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then you come back, you get retested, they adjust the formulas, they adjust the acupuncture, and this is the best possible situation. The problem is, who can do it? It's extremely expensive. It means that you have to be very careful with what you're doing on a dietary basis and so forth. Tibet is a place where the average person was a nomad, and was wandering around in the pampa and was not able to see the doctor, maybe only saw the doctor once every 2 years. So the development of Tibetan formulas is one that's a little bit more constitutional. And we mostly deal in formulas that can be generally used by lots of people. If you have poor liver function and you're not gonna, you have no contraindications, we have a formula that can support your liver function. This kind of stuff. The ones that you're talking about, Semde and Agar and Bimala and so forth, those are general supports for the well-being of our minds. They help with the energy flow in our body and so forth. And as such, they are super subtle, but also very effective. And for most people quite healthy. But again, we always want to look at our own situation because it might not be the same as our neighbors or whatever. They have a tendency to bring the mind down. We have so many thoughts running in our heads all the time. Where does that come from? It comes from Sem Lung, according in Tibetan, or karma prana, getting loose from the belly, going up the central channel, getting inside of our heads, and causing all kinds of energetic responses that are maybe stronger than what we really need for our circumstances. And that makes us feel like we're going crazy, can't sleep. When you start not be able to sleep, then you feel like, oh, I really am going crazy because you feel so bad from not getting enough rest. And we've got all these pressures on us. This can kind of chill that out, give you a little bit more perspective, a little more spaciousness in our minds. That makes the meditation process easier. It makes our practice more effective. It makes us more present in our lives. We're not just spinning off all the time thinking about whatever little thing and have no powers. Like you very wisely said, we try to deal with our mental stuff with our minds. And this, most of the time doesn't work. That's why, if you're not feeling good, the best thing to do is go outside. Go outside, go for a walk, get some exercise, get a little bit of blood flow. You sometimes feel amazingly better right after that. As a support for that, these formulas exist. And since in Tibet, people couldn't see the doctor all the time, you can take the formulas for a long time without, making the body imbalanced, and they can support our well-being in a crazy world. The world is very upsetting these days and full of complicated issues that we have little control over. When those get into our mind body, we start to go a little crazy. And this can just make us a little more chill. Just like the doctor told me, you guys are all crazy. No wonder. If you think of the average Tibetan 100 years ago, they had a very simple mind. It's a very simple world to live in. Our world is very complicated. If you just think about just insurance, one small thing. We got health insurance, life insurance, term policies. We got insurance for our families. We got all this stuff. That's just one little aspect. We got hundreds of aspects like that. Anything that can support us in being more effective, being more peaceful, being more beneficial for others and for ourselves, for our support of our families, better at work and so forth, is a good thing. So I think these formulas are very good support in that way.
Yeah. And so I definitely I used Semday quite a long time, and Bimala, and found that they really helped with my meditation practice, really helped bring anxiety levels down. And as you said, like even some of these things that I thought were just like thought patterns just stopped because of these, energy pathways or whatever were getting corrected. The other aspect of the medicines, some of the medicines you offer and that I've used in my life, are the more like energy supports, right? Because like I have to be a teacher, I have my own kids, I have crazy hours, and I want to wake up early and do practice, and I'm trying to juggle a lot. And so over the years, I've settled on a few that have been really helpful, and one of them is the Jing builder that you guys offer, and the other is Shilajit. And both of these are substances that are known for providing energy. They also have, Shilajit also has a detox element. But maybe you could talk a little bit about that side of things, because once you get yourself kind of in balance, then there are these different, and Shilajit is almost like a food, right? That's one of the cool things I found about some of these herbs like ashwagandha and Shilajit, is that their effects are pretty subtle, and they are almost treated more like a food than a medicine in some ways, because you can take them for extended periods of time, and it, depending on your constitution, might be continuously supportive. So maybe you can share some about that.
Let's talk first about Shilajit, just because that was how you ended your statement there. Shilajit is a black tar-like resin that comes in various forms. It can be very, very thin. It's always extremely sticky, a little bit shiny. According to Ayurvedic medicine, where Shilajit comes from, the Ayurvedic system in India, they say that they've been using Shilajit for 3,000 plus years. It is a natural product. It's found in the high mountains. It's found all over the world. I have harvested it more than one time here in Colorado. Only medium quality, but if it's prepared correctly and purified, it can still be very effective here. But the really great Shilajit comes from India, in the high mountains, Nepal, these kinds of things, over 5,000 meters. And no one, the truth is, nobody knows exactly the process by which this is formed. It's very interesting. What it seems to be is humic matter, like biological material, plant material, decaying under certain conditions and forming this black. When you see it in nature, it's like almost like a rock, but if you break it open or you chip off a piece, it smells like tar. It has a petroleum kind of a smell to it. This was found thousands and thousands of years ago to have really amazing health supporting activity. You only have to take a tiny amount. I was first exposed to it in the early 90s, and was told dip a toothpick like half a centimeter in there, stir it into warm water and drink. That'll be enough. And partially that's because I was very young then. And as you get older, of course, you need more to stimulate the system. But it has a rejuvenatory effect, a longevity style effect. It causes you to have more feeling of energy. It brightens the mind. It can fight off some kinds of disease, supposedly. It has hundreds and hundreds of effects. If you read on our website, there's all these amazing effects. Most recently, you turned me on to a study that was done that with no other support, if a purified form of Shilajit was taken in a tiny amount, I think it was 250 milligrams, per day, then testosterone levels in men increased, free testosterone levels. So there's two types of testosterone. The base level, which is usually bound up, and then the free testosterone, which is what really helps us. The free testosterone was increased enormously in the space of just 1 month. So there are lots of effects of this stuff. I've been involved in the Shilajit, you know, providing industry for many years. I have very good sources. There's a lot of stuff on the market you never know, right? There's some Russian Shilajit out there that I don't know how much study has been done on it. You never know. There's some Shilajit from China that some is very, very good. Some is kind of questionable. There's lots of different Indian, lots of different Nepali Shilajits. It's a fixed quantity material. It doesn't seem to be like no one's figured out how to make it or something. It's a pure material it's a natural material that's then purified. But I can't speak about other types of Shilajit. There are lots of them out there, but you want to find one that's good quality. And I think ours are pretty good. I've been using it for the last 30 years. But it does support energy, does give you a sense of spaciousness in your mind, and acts as a good rejuvenatory tonic for those of us who are getting older. For whether that's okay or not, it can make you feel more youthful and so forth. And it's interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm. And so the other one was the Jing builder, and this is and I wanted to say first about the Shilajit. Increasing your free testosterone is very difficult to do. I mean, mostly you have to take steroids to do that, right? I mean, that's what people are after. Especially as we age and our testosterone levels go down, it's really important to keep those levels up. They really have a huge effect on our feeling of well-being, ability to attain goals, all of these things. So having something that supports that, and there's good study showing that, that's pretty cool. And then so for the Jing builder, Jing is really like life essence, as I best understand it, in Chinese medicine. It's really, we're born with a certain amount of one kind of Jing that we really can't replace. And then when that runs out, it's over for us. Then we have another one that we can maybe build a little bit, and it has to do with, our sustaining our life force. But maybe, Joe, I'm sure you know more about this. But one of the things that depletes this is sexual activity. And I noticed this in myself, that too much sexual activity will lead to depression afterwards. And this Jing builder seems to curb that really, really well. So this is something that I found extremely beneficial as a practitioner when we're doing some of the energy practices and things like that. You really don't want to be in these low energy states because it makes it very difficult to work with the energy at all because it's just not there. So maybe you could share a little bit about this formula and how it works.
Sure. You said a lot of good things there. But to reiterate a few things, this is according to a Chinese model of how energy in the body works. We have there are three levels of refinement of energy in our system, according to the Chinese: Jing, Qi, and Shen. Jing is the most basic energy of humankind, and it's in the form of procreative energy. For men, in ejaculatory fluid. For women, it's in menstrual blood and so forth. But it's even more basic than the actual fluids. It's the sort of relationship between our bodies and the world in an energetic way, like a sexual energy way, that drive. And when this is depleted for men in through ejaculation, and once you ejaculate, you just have to wait. If you're not, you have to wait for some period of time. And they say that, it takes 3 to 5 weeks for that to completely rejuvenate. So, what you said about the Tsalung exercises, the winds and channel exercises in Tibetan Buddhism, specifically Tumo, like the inner heat practice, this is all dependent upon having your Jing be full. They say when your Jing is full, then it transforms some portion of that into a more refined form of energy, which in Chinese systems called qi. In India, it's called prana. It is the life energy. It's in plants, it's in the sun, it's in the Earth's magnetic field, and then our bodies absorb that from different sources. It also makes it out of Jing or refines it out of Jing. And that's what makes us feel alive and feel, have creativity and so forth. When that chi is full, then part of that is refined into mental energy, spiritual power, which the Chinese call Shen. And this is a natural process. You don't have to do anything. If you're alive, you've got Jing, you've got Qi, you've got Shen. They're sometimes called the three treasures in China. And one aspect of Chinese medicine, there are two sides to Chinese medicine. One side is healing illness, and one side is making you the most efficient, lifeful being you can be. On that side, we try to increase Jing, increase Qi, increase Shen, and so that we have a maximum level of responsiveness for others, and our own wishes and goals are more easily accomplished. We have a better attitude, and so forth. When these things are depleted, we feel depressed, we feel powerless, we feel impotent in our lives. And you can tell this if you're a man because you are feeling, and here, excuse me for being a little bit graphic, but you're feeling very sexually excited. And then you meet with your partner, you lose your bodhicitta, as they say. And how do you feel after that? You feel like depressed, you sleep, you're kind of angry easily, and so forth. And then after a few days, here it comes again. Jing Builder and many other formulas like this. But we developed Jing Builder here based on some other Chinese formulas. It's a combination of amino acids and herbs, and it replenishes, it gives the body what it needs to replenish the ejaculatory fluids and the Jing energy associated with that. And I have to say, and this is not tooting my own horn, it's just being grateful, that stuff really works more than any other formula that we carry. That's what I use personally the most, because when you are depleted, which we deplete our Jing not only through sexual energy, but through thinking too much, through being worried, through not getting the right kind of energy, through not being in the sun, just life. Life depletes our energy system. When you take these supplements, you can take them in two ways, right? You can take like several doses in a row after you ejaculate, this is for men, and that replenishes your sexual energy more quickly. You feel a little bit more buoyant, you feel a little bit more psyched up. And you can also take it as a regular thing, take 2 capsules a day or whatever to stay on top of that. Because, if you're practicing these esoteric yogas in the Tibetan system, the first precept, the thing they say first is do not ejaculate. Well, who can do such a thing? That's like, I'm not saying one can't train in this way. Mantak Chia's books are very good supports for this. But if you're in a relationship and it has a physical component, then you're going to be losing this from time to time, or frequently, depending on where your relationship's at. If you're young, it matters very little. Think about when we were 15. When you're 55, like I am, it matters a lot more. And it takes longer to replenish. It has a deeper effect. And we're more sensitive psychically, I think, to the depletion of these energies. And so we tend to look at the world in a more negative way if it's depleted, not even seeing that it might just be physical. So I use this formula a lot. I can say from personal experience, it's extremely safe. It's not very expensive, and it makes a big difference in how I interact with my body and my life. And when your Jing is full, as I said, you have more Qi in your life. You feel more buoyant. You feel more energetic. You feel more possibility. A lot of the path is whether we're specifically on a spiritual path like Buddhism or we're just living our lives, feeling motivated is very important. It
Yeah.
it is directly associated when your Jing energy is full, you feel more motivated on all levels, right? You feel more creative, you feel more compassionate, you feel less aggressive. When those energy levels are down, you're more desperate. You don't know what, maybe you don't know what it's from, but you don't feel like working out. You don't want to go outside. You just want to watch TV. You just be like, this kind of energy. We want to change that. When we have
Yeah.
more energy, we practice harder. We practice with our families. We practice in our sports lives. We practice at work better. We just are more of a positive influence in the world. So yeah, that's a little plug for our product, but I think it's great stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you do too.
Yeah, it's really been an amazing hack because I've worked with the stuff like Montauk Chia's teachings and stuff for 20 years, and it's freaking hard. And yeah, to do it like really successfully is impossible as far as I can tell. So having some method, to circumvent this is really powerful. And anybody who's worked with these energies knows like in the bro science world, they talk about post nut clarity, right? Which is really like right afterwards, because you've lost all your passion, right? You're just intellectual. And this is really damaging for our relationships, because we feel no attraction. You've just cut
Absolutely.
off the attraction, which your partner immediately feels. And that if you do this continuously, as you said, you lose all motivation and desire for anything. And I think this is an epidemic. There's a lot coming out in the dopamine science. This is highly correlated to that. Whenever we get free dopamine, that is like anytime we get quick access to pleasure without any effort, then we tend to lose that dopamine really quickly and lose our drive. And this is, I think, a lot of what they're talking about when they say post-nut clarity. It's no drive, no attraction, just kind of cold analyst, cold analytic mind, which is very where you see a lot of our culture when people are really depressed. They can't connect to anybody. They end up, like you said, sitting in their basement playing video games. Especially for young men, maintaining this energy can be a life-changing thing, especially becoming aware of it. Because I think, I know when I was younger, as you said, it's not as big a concern. But as you get older, you start to notice like, wow, this has a big effect, and a big effect on everything in my life, on how much connection to everything I feel. And I think that's why they call it bodhicitta, right? Because it has a connection to your ability to love, even.
Beautifully said. It's actually right. And I didn't talk about that, but one of the names of the male ejaculatory fluid in Sanskrit is bodhicitta. And bodhi means enlightenment, chitta means heart or mind, the heart of enlightenment. So when you ejaculate, some level of this very basic, to use a negative word for a positive concept, passionate engagement with life goes out. And you know it, you feel it. And in my opinion, I've not heard that term post-nut clarity, which would mean like post-ejaculatory negativity, probably is the real thing, is the world is extremely hard. Our next couple podcasts are going to be on the Eightfold Path and having the right view. The truth of the world is that it's extremely difficult and that suffering is everywhere. You have to modulate in our world how much you see that and through what lens, because otherwise you can just be like, no, there's no point,
Yeah.
and this can be very negative for people. And I think that this has a lot to do with the modern world and I would say, crisis of young men, especially, where they don't have any drive. Relationships don't mean anything. It may be fun to have sex, but it doesn't have any deeper possibility because we're all non-monogamous and ultimately, and all this other stuff, which I think is extremely negative views, and it sucks the life force out of your world. And you end up thinking like, what difference does it make? What can I do? And you're sitting in the bathtub playing with your rubber ducky, as Wallace Shawn says in My Dinner with Andre. A very unfortunate circumstance. We have to, in a sense, artificially increase our ability to be responsive to the world in order to have our lives have any meaning. And
Yeah.
so these substances, whether it's things for our emotional life and sleeping and anxiety, like agar and semde and bimala, or it's more directed toward our energy bodies, whether that's Chulen or Jing Builder or Shilajit or any of the other things that we carry and other people carry, uh, used judiciously and carefully in the lowest effective dose, which is important. You're not just chowing the stuff. You're using it to support yourself to see the world as clearly as possible.
Yeah.
And clearly through a lens of possibility. What do we really want in our lives? We want to feel like we have control over something. What is the real truth? We have almost no control. That's the real truth. But if we live inside of that, then you just feel depressed, which is why fasting from things like the news can be extremely powerful and beneficial. We should have a whole podcast on that because people
Yeah.
think that they must know what's going on everywhere in the world, even though what that tends to do for most people is give you a tremendous feeling of anxiety and depression, and have no control, no power. Who's calling you to ask what should be done in Ukraine or Gaza or Africa? Nobody. So you can't do anything.
Yeah.
And that makes you feel like I'm powerless, so nothing matters. This is the exact opposite of the truth. And in order to support a more clear vision of the world, these supplements can be really beneficial. Of course, can you do it without them? Yes. If you're willing to modulate your sleep, how you're exercising, how much time you're spending outside, who can do that? We are slaves to our circumstances, which mostly have to do for most people with working all the time. When that's
Yeah.
the case, you got to use all the tools you can. I
Yeah.
myself, a member of the Whatever Works Wellness Association, we use whatever we can to make ourselves the best people possible. And these substances, they're not expensive. They work really well. And that's why we're talking about them. Not because I want to increase sales, which of course I do, but it's not my main thing at all.
Yeah, and of course, there's many different places you can get these substances, but yeah, this whole dopamine detox thing has become a buzzword in the modern culture, and Zen had figured this out long before everybody else, right? Like when you reduce our stimulus, our external stimulus, then your happiness increases and your ability to enjoy little, small, subtle things increases. But we are so bombarded with stimulation for free all the time. Any video you want to watch, any song you want to hear, any food you want to eat, it is insane. And it really is leaving, I think, all of us feeling completely numb and without resource to navigate, right? Because it used to be you could really enjoy something because it was rare, but nothing is rare anymore. So there's no relishing of anything. What I found is that working on this energetic level can help match that a little bit, right? Like we have to bring the sensory stuff down a little bit to the best of our ability, but this can help us to meet it without having to deprive ourselves. And like I can't do it. I don't know about you, but I can't make myself like a Zen monk and not have a phone and not be constantly engaged in the world. Like it's just not possible. So I need as many tools and resources as I can to try to match that experience where I can be in the moment and enjoy my life moment to moment, enjoy the subtle, the little things, and not be so dependent on intense gratification because I'm so numbed out to everything. And so having this high level of Jing and everything is what makes that possible, makes that dopamine sensitivity increase. So this is a great resource, and we've gone on for a while, but I'd be remiss without having at least a moment for you to talk about Chulen and what this substance has served in a possible way for people to engage with, maybe even fasting, and some of the things they might be really beneficial for their spiritual practice.
Very briefly, and we could have a whole podcast on Chulen because it's a big topic. Chulen means to extract the essence. And that's kind of what we're doing all the time in our lives, right? If once you're on any kind of like aesthetic path, whether it's a spiritual path or any kind of paying attentionness in your life, you're trying to extract the essence of each moment, right? You're like, enjoy the fact that the weather is beautiful. Enjoy the fact that you're in a relationship with someone you love. Enjoy the fact of this rereading Treasure Island or whatever floats your boat, right? We want to extract the essence of our experience, use it to buoy ourselves up to be as beneficial for ourselves, our families, and others as we can be. So understanding this, there are different levels of Chulen, right? You can try to extract like they do in the practice of Qi Gong. Qi means that same energy. Gong means work, working with energy to absorb the energy of the world, the natural world, and use it to buoy ourselves up physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and so forth. The Tibetans have, of course, refined this over a great period of time, and they got different forms of Chulen, from extremely esoteric, where you're absorbing the most refined kind of energy that exists in the sky through your eyes and bringing it into your system that way. This is very esoteric stuff, all the way to eating pills, which is the most kind of gross way. We do this with food, right? We don't.
Yeah.
We eat food where our bodies are extracting out the nutrients and the energy and using that to buoy up ourselves and then excreting the waste. The Tibetans have these different formulas, and they're herbal formulas and energetic formulas in which we can concentrate that chu, that essence, and then take it like a kind of spiritual multivitamin, right? In the same way that a multivitamin has, a good one has all the stuff you need, biotin and B12 and whatever, and we're not having to eat specifically B12 heavy foods, we can take a supplement to increase these things in our systems. In the same way, this essential energy can be concentrated in these herbal formulas and used to replenish our Jing, replenish our Qi, replenish our Shen, and buoy us up to a little bit higher level. And we have a bunch of these formulas. I find them to be very, very effective. If taken at the right time and not for too long, you can move your whole energy body up to a new level, and you start to see with greater and greater clarity what's in front of you, which is all that we want, right? Is just to be as present as possible in as good a way as we can for everyone, including ourselves. These pills can help do that.
Awesome. But we've discussed a vast array of things. And if any of this interests you, leave in the comments, let us know, shoot us an email if you want us to have an episode on one of these topics more in depth, because we're happy to talk about it. But it's a huge, huge world, and we could have a whole podcast just on these things. So I hope that was interesting to you. Thank you, Joe, for talking with us about it. If you are interested, I will plug Joe. I know he doesn't need to plug himself, but City Energetics is cityenergetics.com. That's SIDDHI, City, not CITY. And the other one is futurealchemy.com. We've talked about those before, but feel free to go over there and check those out. Look at the different formulas he has. I think that you might find these as supportive things on your path. And there's lots of articles online about, you can learn more about it. You can always ask ChatGPT. It could tell you all about it. But thank you so much, Joe. And we'll be on, as Joe mentioned, to our next episode, and we're going to start talking about the Eightfold Path. So it's really fun for me to kind of go back over the basics. I learn a lot by doing it. So I hope that you guys do too. And if you enjoy this show, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps our little show out to reach more people who also might enjoy this material. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thank you.